online theology risks usurping the local church. The problem with Christian YouTube that Bob the Baptist talks about is basically YouTube itself. We're using this platform to share our message, but the platform actually has an influence on us. It rewards us for doing things a certain way.
Why so often do platforms and people start off with such sincerity and then over time become something else? The machine.
If we're not self-aware, we can allow the platform we're using to shape the people we're becoming.
There's a pattern of people who tend to start off a certain way, but over time they morph into something else. What I'm saying is that they're getting changed by the machine, and they don't have like the proper backstops to prevent them or protect them from getting influenced as an influencer by this machine that they're trying to operate within. I can offset this problem, at least for myself, by just being aware of how the machine operates. So it's best to try in each video to do something that feels inspired and feels beautiful and gives meaning and is artistic.
So Bob the Baptist has got some comments about the self-awareness we need to have a presence here, and also the way we view what we're doing. He talks about informative entertainment rather than ministry.
The Reformation came along and kind of flipped the script by saying that regular daily work is just as important and is just as meaningful and is just as glorifying to God as ministry. It restored human dignity to regular work outside of church work. I don't see this as ministry. I see this as informative entertainment.
That made me think about how online theology risks usurping the local church. For Bible teachers, engagement can often come through Q&A formats. So think like Mike Winger's 20 questions, or Ask Pastor John, or Ask NT Wright, anything. Now, these things are really good. They help people learn and they make theology accessible. But here's the problem I want to talk about. What happens when people start talking to us instead of their pastor? Local pastors are not just content creators. They're there in your local church to care for your soul, to walk alongside you in suffering, to reform your mind with the gospel, and to reshape your life into the image of Christ. They're there to hold you accountable and to notice when you're not there. When someone asks for advice online, they can get good counsel, but they're still alone. There's no one knocking on the door a week later to see how you're doing. What a lot of people are doing online is a form of ministry. It's not the ministry of the local church, but it's an act of service. I'm editing, and I thought I should defend what I said about ministry. So in 1 Corinthians 12, 4-7, it says, there's variety of gifts, but the same Spirit, and a variety of ministries, but the same Lord. And to each one is given the manifestation of the Spirit for the common good. And there's something similar in 1 Peter 4:10. God has given each of you a gift, so minister it to one another as good stewards of the manifold grace of God. Sometimes this word minister or ministry is translated service or serve. So if we think about ministry as using the gifts God has given us to serve others, then every Christian is doing ministry. Ministry does not just belong to the leaders of the church. It is something that all Christians are called to do. But where I agree with Bob the Baptist is that ministry is people usually use the term ministry to talk about the work of like an ordained church leader. I think that instead of saying that what Bob the Baptist is doing and what I'm doing is not ministry, it's probably better to say that what those church leaders are doing is a special type of ministry. It's a pastoral ministry. It's the ministry of the word. They have authority to teach in a church. They celebrate the Lord's Supper, and they have the authority to do discipline. But Bob the Baptist and I are just making YouTube videos, and it's totally different.
I am a public servant. I am not the bad guy.
Sometimes online ministry is like eating marshmallows instead of eating meals. Maybe you need as a temporary relief, but not long-time substantial nourishment. I've seen this sometimes in Discord servers where people, because of the anonymity of the server, they can reach out and confess a serious struggle in their life. But what they really need is someone who knows them, that can walk alongside them. Someone might say, but I just want information. Of course, I'm not going to use online ministries to replace the pastoral support of the local church. Well, that's fair enough. Not everyone asking a question online is having a crisis. Some people just want to learn. So what's the problem with that? There's nothing wrong with wanting to learn and asking for help. Knowledge is good. We're told by Peter, make every effort to add to your faith goodness, and to goodness, knowledge. So reaching out to ask for help and to grow knowledge, that's great. But when you ask that question in your local church, there's more than just information being transferred. You're building relationships in your local church. You're signaling to leaders that you're someone who is open to input and wants to grow. You're potentially shaping what will be taught in your church as you make leaders aware of the questions that people in the congregation have. And you're walking alongside people who are going to help you keep learning long term. When we outsource questions to the internet instead of our local church, then we lose ongoing pastoral support, we lose relational connection, and we lose visibility in our local church. Eventually, if you're not careful, then the main theological influence in your life might be someone who doesn't even know your name. There's some really good reasons to have online Bible teachers that are accessible to people. Maybe you live in an area where the church is persecuted, and going to a local church is a big risk to you and to that church. Maybe you're from a community that is hostile to you becoming a Christian. And again, it's a big risk for you to go to a local church to find information. There are some people who have severe social anxiety, and for them, going to a local church will be a big step of courage that they might not feel able to take yet. So online Bible teachers are accessible to people like this. Also, online services are accessible to people like this. But don't let these online Bible teachers or services be a reason to not seek help with overcoming these fears and anxieties. There are also people who are neurodiverse who struggle with loud music and big crowds. And online stuff is accessible to people like that as well. But again, while it might be a short-term solution, don't ever let it be a long-term solution. You can maybe email with a pastor and let them know what you find overwhelming and if any accommodations can be made. Another reason to use online Bible teachers or Christian YouTubers is maybe people in your church, your pastor and elders don't have some expertise in a niche area that you're interested in or that's concerning you. In those cases, outside help is really useful. But even then, supplement, don't substitute. Whatever you're learning about online, share it with your local church. Bring your local church into whatever you're processing. Let them see your curiosity and share your concerns with them if you have any. Also, if you're not a Christian, maybe you don't even belong to a church, but you're curious and you want to learn. That's great, but don't make faith just an intellectual pursuit. It's not just about knowledge, but it's also about a community. You're learning about a faith that is practiced in community. Even if you're in the curiosity stage, visit local churches and let local Christians be part of this journey that you're on with you. So the danger is not that there are online resources. The danger is that those online resources feel sufficient for someone. If YouTube makes you feel like you've got enough teaching or input, then you might lose motivation to overcome anxiety or to embrace vulnerability or just to step into a church community. Remember, supplements are great, but they are not meals. What should Christian YouTubers do? Like Bob the Baptist said, be self-aware. The platform we're using is shaping us. If we know that we're being influenced by the platform, we can resist optimizing for views and for engagement, and instead we can consciously optimize for the spiritual health of the people who are viewing. Controversy gets views, but if we're thinking about spiritual health, then we're not going to just engage in controversy for views and create outraged and anxious Christians. If we're thinking about spiritual health, then we're going to engage with controversy because it needs to be confronted for the health of the church. Second thing is actively redirect people to churches. Now, I know that people like Mike Winger and John Piper do this. I've seen them do it. When people ask them questions, they might say, you should talk to your pastor about this. But usually it's because people are asking about a crisis. They're asking a question about pastoral support. This is the situation I'm in. Do you have advice? But maybe we should be redirecting people to their pastors, even if they're not in crisis, even just for theological questions, Bible questions. It's great that we can contribute to people finding answers. And I want to answer people's questions, but what if we actively redirect people once we've given the answer, say, take this back to your church and continue the conversation with them? Basically, we need to give away influence. If we are becoming the main voice of theological influence in a person's life, that should concern us. We need to try and strengthen local churches by redirecting to them. What should viewers do? I'm a viewer as well. I watch a lot of stuff and I engage with it. And we need to be honest with ourselves about the way that we're engaging with these channels. Are you engaging with something because you're lonely and you're letting this be a substitute for actual real friendships that are harder to find but are so much more rewarding? Second, are you engaging with this to avoid vulnerability and being authentic with the people in your life? Don't bypass vulnerability, because when you bypass vulnerability, you bypass receiving care as well, being seen and being loved. Third question, are you having theological conversations online that are totally disconnected from your local church? Like they don't even know what you're learning about. They don't know that you have these questions and interests. If that's the case, then your main theological input is the internet instead of God's ordinary means of spiritual formation and theological formation for you, which is your local church and the pastor of it. This is dangerous because you might be exposing yourself to unhealthy ideas that your church could help you process in a wiser way. A lot of online communities are not very good reflections of the real life communities that they're representing online. Online influencers and communities often lack discipline as well. A lot of the big influencers are not being held accountable by leaders in their church, and it leads to these online communities that are really ungodly and disrespectful and hateful and ignorant as well, but they celebrate each other's obnoxious behavior. This is easily avoided by letting your local church be the main theological influence and a check and balance against the internet. So summing up, the core problem. Christian YouTube is supposed to be supplemental, but sometimes it becomes primary. Often it's obvious, like when people only attend online services, but other times it's subtle. Even channels that are self-consciously supplemental can become the main theological influence on a person's life. When that happens, we are losing something essential. The local church is not just a place where you can go and get information. It's the ordinary means through which God shapes his people, through preaching, through baptism and communion, through discipline, and through shared lives. Christian YouTube can contribute and serve that mission, but it cannot replace it or become primary.
Perhaps the best way to influence people is to try not to even change them, but just make something beautiful on its own. I wonder if more Christian YouTubers saw it this way, if they'd approach each video more as attempting meaning than propaganda. So if you want to make the world a better place, make your bed, make art, and stay Baptist, my friends.